Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals virtual meeting. We're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties.
It's right here. I can't remember. I'll take a picture.
Could you mute out, please? Or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the variance. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. After your case is announced by Mr. Donadio, the moderator will connect you to the meeting so you can present your case to the board. Once you have completed your presentation, if anyone on the board or in the planning department has any questions, they will be asked. Then any interested party who would like to speak on this case will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any questions and concerns, after which the case will be closed. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. You can contact the planning department after 12 p.m. tomorrow for the status of your case. We do have 2 adjournments tonight. The first case is case 18606, George Delato. That has been adjourned to December 7th. And the second case is case 18479, 20 Sunken Meadow Holdings, LLC. That has been adjourned to December 7th also. All right, Mr. Donadio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18605, Cafe Red CRK Holding Group, Joseph Haller, 107 Main Street, Kings Park. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Main Street or Broadway, Route 25A, and Old Dock Road. The property is zoned CB. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum required parking from 20 stalls to 7 stalls. A variance of a standard to reduce the required distance for outdoor dining from a residential district from 150 feet to 130 feet. A variance of a standard to permit a wall or fence higher than 4 feet for an existing outdoor dining area within a 20-foot by 50-foot tent.
Good evening. Can I have the applicant, please?
Donald King, 75 East Main Street, Kings Park, New York. I represent Reds. This has been a food service place since I was in high school, so you know how old it is. It's been there forever. It was Bob's Luncheonette. In order to survive, they put up a temporary tent. And I talked to planning today, and we're going for outdoor dining. We go, if it's under 1,000 square feet, we don't have to worry about parking, and we don't have to worry about sanitary. The depth of zoning here is 200 feet. The house behind this property is totally located within the CB district. I counted the number of empty stores in Kings Park. There are 12. We don't need another empty space. This is absolutely necessary for their survival in these tough times. It won't produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. It's been this way forever. It won't be a detriment to nearby properties. The house behind there is in CB, not in residential. We can't achieve this by any other method. It's not substantial in that if it's under 1,000 square feet, we don't have to worry about parking. We don't have to worry about sanitary, and it won't have an impact on the environment. So I ask you to grant this.
All right, thank you, Mr. King. We received a letter from the Methodist Church across the street, and they have concerns about the reduction in parking spaces. They feel it's going to impact them for their services, especially on the weekends and evenings. Can you address that, please?
Well, if we're entitled to have that many spaces, we're entitled to it, and they have. That's their problem. It's not our problem. This is a restaurant that's trying to survive, and it's been there forever. And in order to survive, they need outdoor dining.
All right. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. King, how many, currently there are 12 or 14 parking spaces?
It's going to be 7.
No,
If
currently, but without, if the tent wasn't there.
If the tent wasn't there, there would be 12.
So there'll be 7 spaces in the back, or 6 spaces in the back and 1 in the front?
Yes. If I may address the parking in Kings Park, if you come down the street, you start at Verizon, no parking. You Main Street Pub, no parking. The bagel shop, which does a great business, no parking. There's many stores in this central business district that have absolutely no parking or little parking, and this fits in.
Is there anyone else on the board that has any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
So just for the board's information, we have had some discussions about the application. Excuse me. We looked at the possibility of perhaps if the applicant were to consider revising their plan to come up with a smaller outdoor dining area and or proposing to do an addition to the existing building, it would free up a couple of parking spaces on site. Additionally, it would also eliminate some of the variances that they're asking for.
I talked to my client, and we'd be willing to do whatever's necessary to have the outdoor dining, and we'll keep it under 1,000 square feet, which I indicated then takes away the parking requirements and the sanitary flow requirements. They need this desperately.
Blaze, are you talking about the possibility of putting a small addition on the rear of the building?
Towards the rear, yes. Because if you do an addition, you don't have a requirement to meet a 150-foot setback if it's an enclosed addition. If we were talking about doing outdoor dining, we would probably move it a little bit further away from the back of the building so that they met the 150 feet. And they would still be able to utilize that space at the end of the building, and they would probably have at least one additional space towards the front by Main Street.
The outdoor dining, the depth of zoning here is central business from Main Street is 200 feet. So the house behind it is in central business. If you buy a house in central business, you have to expect there might be some business.
I have a question for Mr. King.
Yes.
Outdoor dining, I don't know how this is going to help them in the winter months.
They have heaters.
They're going to have heaters into the tent. Is that what you're saying? So
Not if it's outdoor dining, it won't be a tent. It will be an outdoor dining an addition, and there will be heat.
So that's something similar to what the Bonwit Inn, the Lamani Grill was proposing by having an addition on the building, but the doors, the windows, the walls could be open and it would be semi-outdoor dining.
Absolutely, Blaze, exactly. I represent the Bonwit, and that's what we'd be happy to do.
Okay, so you're gonna have to come back and have a new presentation with new drawings then, right?
Unless I can just submit them, but I'll be happy to come back if necessary. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do.
All right, let's just see if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to be heard on the application.
If anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand and you will be unmuted. Not seeing anybody at the moment.
Okay, then. Do you think you can
Hello?
be ready?
Hello?
Hello?
We can hear you. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak. Members of the board, my name is George Santi, and my residential property is located directly next to Cafe Red at 14 Old Dock Road on the north side of their property.
George,
And I object to-
George, can you just spell your last name so we get it correct for the record, please?
Yes, it's Santti.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, the existing tent which Cafe Red has chosen to erect in the parking lot is illegal and was considered so by the building department through the revocation of their permit back in July of this year. And for almost 2 years, Cafe Red has chosen to deceive the planning board by submitting a false application and ignoring the guidelines clearly established by the town by erecting and operating this tent illegally. These actions have been the reason for numerous disturbances and have imposed a huge burden on both my safety and well-being. In regards to the proposed variance of reducing the distance from 100 feet to 130 feet, I object. Right now, as we speak, their illegal tent is less than 55 feet away from my residential structure and no more than 40 feet away from my property line. On top of that, Cafe Red's property length is less than 100 feet. And any surveyor that comes to this property will note that. It is not 200 feet, it's less than 100 feet. Using the numbers mentioned, this variance of 130 feet is baseless due to the fact that the existing tent would now be located in the middle of the road on Main Street. In regards to the proposed variance of reducing the number of parking spaces to from 20 to 7 spaces, I object. As it stands right now, the legally erected 20 by 50 foot tent has led to a reduction of the current number of parking spaces by 60%. And with the governor's office lifting restrictions on indoor dining and with the use of said illegal tent, Cafe Red is now operating at 200% capacity. As for the town's scheduled parking requirements, all restaurants are required to have 1 parking space for every 100 square feet of gross building area. The illegally erected tent would require Cafe Red to add an additional 10 spaces and not reduce the current number of parking spaces by 13, which they are requesting. This illegal reduction of the number of parking spaces and the increased seating capacity by Cafe Red has led to a displacement of their customer vehicles and delivery trucks to neighboring parking lots and residential streets. And when no parking is available, these vehicles are forced to park illegally in the clearly no parking zone in front of my house, blocking both my driveway and visibility, denying me the ability to come and go as I please. In the past, car accidents have happened in front of my home due to illegal parking. And with Cafe Red's illegal reduction of parking spaces and the use of the illegal tent, similar situations can take place. Due to the illegal reduction of the parking space, my property has also suffered damage. One example being one of their customers' large SUV ramming into my fence and destroying it due to the lack of maneuverability caused by the illegal tent, which was all caught on video by my home surveillance system. In regards to the proposed variance of building a wall or barrier around the existing tent, I object. This would reduce the parking lot's maneuverability even further, causing even greater risk to my property, as well as me, my family, and the people of this town. Constructing a wall or barrier, I believe, is unnecessary because the tent itself is illegal. And constructing any type of wall or barrier will make things more difficult when it's time for the site to be brought back into compliance with the original approved site conditions, as per the fourth line in the town guidelines found in the original application. Members of the board, I also feel obligated to inform you that Cafe Red is using and storing propane gas heaters at the present time. This was overlooked by when New York State was declared in a state of emergency. Now that we're no longer in a state of emergency, I believe Cafe Red is violating New York State Fire Code section 603.4.2.1.1 by illegally using propane gas heaters and storing propane gas tanks in the illegally erected tent. This illegal use and storage can cause immeasurable harm to me and my family, as well as the people of this town. The illegal tent is also located less than 20 feet from parked vehicles violating New York State Fire Code that the town of Smithtown complies with. One of these spaces violating said code is the required handicap space, which is located only inches away from the illegal tent. In conclusion, I would like to say that I believe that the national and state and town code and guidelines are put in place to protect both the citizen safety and the quality of life. For this reason, it is my opinion that Cafe Red, CRK Holding, and Joseph Haller, by proposing these variances, are attempting to deceive you, the board, and the people of this town, as well as undermining the integrity and the purpose of these codes and guidelines put in place so that they can keep postponing the removal of their illegal existing tent ordered by the building department back in July of this year. I have lived in this residence for the last 20 years, and Cafe Red has only been occupying the building for the last 10. And there has been no issue concerning the fact of surviving. When Donald J. Howard Esquire, their attorney, says that the businesses have survived without parking, is because these businesses operate on an in and out basis. People are not staying or parking in the middle of the street for 2 hours at a time. Their customers' vehicles are now displacing surrounding businesses who are operating their own businesses and forcing these other customers to now be displaced. And that's all I have to say for this at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand.
No one?
Currently not seeing any hands raised.
All right. Mr. King, are you going to revise the existing plans and present them again?
Yes.
December 7th, giving you enough time?
Let's make it later.
Okay. Blaze, can you help me out? I don't have a schedule for next year. What's the first meeting in January?
First meeting in January would be the 11th.
Okay.
Is it going to be Zoom or live?
We don't know.
We're not sure.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. The 11th is great.
Okay, so case 18605 Cafe Red has been adjourned to January 11th, 2022. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18607, Ellie Simino, 92 Grandview Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property is the south side of Grandview Lane, 1,364 feet east of Laurel Drive. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 44 feet for a proposed 115 square foot porch. reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 13 feet, reduce the total side yards from 34 feet to 30 feet, increase the maximum gross floor area of the lot from 25% to 26% for a proposed 1,162 square foot first floor addition, to decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 8 feet to 0, to increase the maximum height of a fence from 6 feet to 10 feet for an existing 1,000 square foot batting cage.
Could I have the applicant, please?
Hi, I'm here. It's Ellie.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Ellie Cimino, Cimino, 92 Grandview Lane, Smithtown, 11787.
How do you put it on mute? I wonder.
All right,
Hello.
Hi.
go ahead, Ellie, tell us.
Hello.
Can you tell us why you're here tonight?
Well, can James speak on my behalf?
I'm sorry?
James is here. James is here to speak on my behalf.
Okay, fine.
Okay, James?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah.
Okay. James, can you introduce yourself? Spell your last name so we get it correct and give your address, please.
Absolutely. My name is James Zapka, Zapka, from Todd O'Connell Architects. And we are located at 1200 Veterans Highway, Hop Hog, New York, 11788.
Okay, fine.
Okay, the case before you tonight is a renovation and additions project with proposed roof over front porch and garage expansion. The existing home is approximately a 1,900 square foot, 4-bedroom ranch with attached garage that the Ciminos would like to modernize and make more room for their growing family. We would like to achieve this by adding a first floor addition to the rear of the house in order to gain more living space and area, a larger kitchen, and to create a master suite on the first floor. The bedrooms that exist currently on the first floor would be relocated to the second floor addition that is being proposed. This will make the total bedroom count for the house after construction a total of 5. They would like to gain additional off-street parking space and mudroom as part of this project. Therefore, we are proposing a 1-story garage expansion on the west side of the property along the existing 1-car garage. And to tie this additions and renovations project all together, we propose to do a front roof over porch, which is very common to a design and renovation of this caliber. In order to construct these additions, we request the front yard be reduced from 50 feet to 44 feet for the front roofed over porch. The second floor addition actually meets both side yard setbacks on the minimum and the aggregate. However, the garage addition, we request the minimum side yard setback be reduced from 16 feet to 13 feet, and the aggregate side yard be reduced from 34 feet to 30 feet in order to construct this addition. We feel this request is a minimal request, as the garage is only going to be 1 story high with a hip sloping gable roof line back into the second floor proposed. Lastly, we request that the gross floor area be increased from 25% to 20%, 26% overall to construct all these additions and bring everything together. Also, as part of this application and talking with the Ciminos, we would like to withdraw the batting cage from the application, as it will not be, it will be taken down, and I believe the homeowner could verify that.
Okay, so presently there's a 10-foot chain link fence running along the back. That fence is going to be taken down?
Yes.
And you're going to put it up with like a 6-foot fence?
No, it's just a batting cage. It's just fenced in batting cage. We're taking that down. We have a regular fence.
Yeah. Yeah, the 10-foot cage, Mr. Chairman, is just for the batting cage itself. That's the 10 feet. That will be disassembled, taken down, and the existing 6-foot perimeter fence will remain on the property.
Okay, fine. All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Planning?
I do have one question for Mr. Zapka. Have
Sure.
you did mention that there's going to be a total of 5 proposed bedrooms?
Yes, their existing house is 4, and we are going to be increasing it up to 5, having the master suite on the first floor and the 4 located upstairs.
Okay. Have you contacted the Suffolk County Health Department to see if there would be any issues with sanitary?
I believe that we were going to go through the board presentations first, and we were probably looking into that, but I don't foresee any issues as there is enough front yard to actually maintain a system of that caliber.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Right. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Once again, if anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Chairman, I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Jeff. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You do the same.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18608, Jeffrey Strattinger, 2 Storybook Lane, St. James. The location of the property, the northwest corner of Storybook Lane and Pumpkin Road. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting to reduce the front yard setback from lot line on Pumpkin Road from 10 feet to 0 for a proposed 6-foot fence.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Andrew Malguinera here.
Excuse me?
You're speaking on this application?
I am.
All right. Did you submit all the necessary paperwork?
We do not have a power of attorney.
We believe it. We dropped everything we required off this afternoon.
Is the applicant present on this meeting?
I don't believe Jeffrey is here.
Blaze, I have a check on the sheet, the checkoff sheet.
Right. But I don't see anything about a power of attorney. Do you know if you filled out a power of attorney?
I thought we did. This is our second time here. We 100% submitted on the first time. I thought we submitted today. I don't.
So you submitted it at the first hearing. This is an adjourned hearing.
No, there was a pool we did previously, and I thought we submitted it for this one too, but I can't verify it now. I have to verify it tomorrow in my office, but I was under the impression that we did.
Okay, I don't have anything indicating that. So, Mr. Chairman and Karen.
I haven't reviewed anything. Yeah, I haven't reviewed a power of attorney. Without a power of attorney, then or the owner being present, the matter is going to have to be adjourned.
Can I just have the gentleman's name who is speaking?
Andrew Malguinera.
Spell your last name, sir, please.
Malguarnera.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is it possible for you to contact your client and have them join this?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if you move me over to the next case, I could have him possibly have him join.
Okay, see what you can do. Otherwise, we're going to have to adjourn it to like December 7th.
Understood.
All right.
Thank you. I'll let you know for the next case. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All righty. The next case on the agenda, case number 18609, Laura and Michael Fallon, 16 Roy Drive in Wisconsin. The location of the property, the west side of Roy Drive, 764 feet south of, I guess that's Gagel Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 68% for existing paving.
Could I have the applicant, please?
Hi, good evening, sir. This is Mike and Laura Fallon.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. I'm trying to undo the video, but it won't let the video stream, but I guess you have the documents that you need.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us why you're here tonight?
Thank you. So we started the journey for home improvement in the early stage of 2020 when we applied for a pool permit and began conversations with various members within the town to ensure that we understood and achieved adhering to all the requirements and codes and different things. At the point that the pool was put in, we have a back section. We have a back section of our property, which is the lower back half that has a drainage issue. So at the time that we were putting our pavers down, we decided that it was a very good opportunity to try to fix the way that the property was and to help achieve more aesthetics and prevent erosion while the ground was opened and exposed. In doing that, we worked with a local contractor who is knowledgeable, is a Suffolk County licensed, and we thought also aware of Smithtown code. And we mapped out a design for our backyard, including adding the added drainage to prevent erosion from the property lines and the property behind us. And in doing so, the size of our yard in ratio to the size of the pool then had pavers put around it. That added paving became what is being estimated at above the 25% requirement, which we were not aware of, nor was the contractor. During the time that we had gone for our permits, our backyard kind of was a back and forth with a lot of different people from the town, inspectors, who did provide guidance in relation to other things that were being done. But through showing the designs of the backyard and through explaining what we were doing, at no time did it come up that there was a code regarding this until somebody in our neighborhood had reported that there was over paving. So what we did was we took a step back and we said, based on our property design and where our house is and the size of the piece of property, the pool itself, unfortunately, because of the size of the pool and the smallness backyard, when you paved around the pool by default, unfortunately, with the walkways to the gate, you wound up being over your 25%. But we feel that because we took such great steps to conform to the neighborhood, where I've submitted some pictures of the 18 homes that we were asked to provide a 200-foot radius to alert them of this hearing and what was happening. You can see that 14 out of the 18 addresses on the list are actually above 25% paved. In addition to that, we believe that we conform to the neighborhood. We continue to have a positive impact on the environment and the neighborhood by increasing property values, by using high quality, environmentally approved materials to do our backyard. In addition, hiring local licensed and insured contractors during a pandemic. And we feel that the pavers themselves brought beautification. So I think along with the drainage that we resolved from to help prevent the erosion and conforming to the neighborhood, I feel that we are helping our neighborhoods in a positive.
You're helping your neighborhood.
I'm sorry?
You said you're helping your neighborhood. You cut out for a second, that's all.
Oh, I'm sorry. We feel that we're staying in lockstep with the expectations of the property values within our neighborhood, outside, within the 200 square feet, as well as outside of that 200 square feet, because of the homes that I've provided, of the ones that have a pool, they are what appears to be above the 25% limit. And I feel that the design that we have, which I did submit what the final design would look like, only beautified and add value to our home, which would increase property values to both the left and right side of us, as well as the neighborhood itself. So we're looking for guidance from the board. We're looking for guidance to ensure we do the right thing. But we did try very hard to ensure that the issues that were inherent to the neighborhood when it was built, we had an opportunity to correct it, and we took that opportunity, and we took that added expense of adding drainage lines in to try to help. And unfortunately, you know, here we sit with, you know, with the design for how it was mapped out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Of course.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Just to let the board know that we did receive some information from a resident who has concerns about the project that's going on in the applicant's backyard, but I'm sure that that person will probably speak on the record.
Okay, fine, thank you. With that said, is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Chairman, Vincent Tremarco.
Oh, okay, Mr.
Hi.
Tremarco.
Just as a way of introduction, my client will speak. Is the son-in-law of the Steinberg Protection Trust. His wife is one of the beneficiaries, and they live next, Mr. Steinberg, when he was alive, lived next door to the applicant. So Arthur Heinrich, the son-in-law, would like to speak on behalf of his wife, who is a trustee of the Steinberg Protection Trust, and get into some areas which I think the board should know about.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Tremarco.
Good evening. Can you hear me? This is Arthur Heinrich.
Okay, Arthur, can you just introduce yourself, spell your last name, and give your address, please, so we get it correct on the record?
Sure. It's Arthur Heinrich, Heinrich, and I reside at 155 Northern Boulevard, St. James, New York.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right. I have quite a few concerns with this project. This is and was my father-in-law's home. We're not residing in this home right now. We're trying to ourselves finalize some permits that we have open on our house, which includes a retaining wall and also includes a front porch addition that was done without permits. And the board graciously granted us all the approvals for that. And we are in the process of getting those final inspections done. With that said, there's multiple problems here with this construction that's going on. Is Matthew able to bring up any of the pictures that I submitted? And each of the board members were supposedly given copies of my surveys and copies of the pictures that I provided.
I have some.
Okay. Well, we have a full-size survey which shows my father-in-law's entire property and shows just the portions that abut to the Fallon's home. In the large one, there's a specific dimension down in the lower right-hand corner that says 0.2 and 3 feet west. That is a dimension or a coordinate given to the orientation of the corner of the property to my father-in-law's retaining wall that was approved. And it's The retaining wall is 3 feet west of the property line. When this wall was put in, the fence was put in also, and the fence was placed on top of the retaining wall. The reason that the fence was placed on top of the retaining wall was that the property sloped off, because at the time in 1996 or 97, when this was going on, the home which we're talking about now, 16 Roy Drive, which is the Fallons, there was no retaining wall there at the time. There was no retaining wall, when the Donnellys owned the home, and there is only a retaining wall that has now been added, by the Fallons. And that retaining wall actually now touches my father-in-law's retaining wall, which is set in 3 feet from the corner of the property line. Now, one of the things we'd like from the board, because we had a meeting on Friday last week with both the planning department, Blaze was there, Bill White from the building department was there, Jennifer was there from the law department, and we had a roundtable discussion about this project. And one of the things that came out of that meeting is that we need a clarification, and we need to have the code interpreted for us, because Bill White is saying one thing, we're saying another thing, and the building department, if I were to go in today and ask for a permit for this, they wouldn't allow me to build what the Fallons have built without getting, without these setbacks that we're saying that they should be following. So we need an interpretation from this board. Blaze also understands, and Blaze was part of that conversation, and I'm sure that he can interject, as we're going through this. There's several problems. The fence on my father-in-law's property is set in from the property line. And again, I'm saying that because it was that way because their property sloped off so greatly. The retaining wall is about 4 feet, maybe it's greater than 4 feet in height now. The first picture that you see here on the screen is while they're under construction, they raised over the existing retaining wall approximately 23 to 26 inches, depending on whether you count the old cap that they put on top that they reused. But the wall is made up of multitude of different types of block, and the wall is actually failing. Engineering has been out. Engineering has notified them that they are required to obtain a DEC permit. They're required to get a existing building permit for the retaining wall. And what they've also done is if you go to the next picture, Matthew, one more, right here. Our fence is approximately 2.5 feet in from our property line. And if you look at the picture, I was not able to go over and put a tape measure across over to the concrete right there of this raised portion of the patio. But as you can see down along the whole thing, that there's all kinds of erosion going towards my property, because my property is on the left with the stockade fence. They've also built on my property. They've taken all their used brick and all their other retaining wall block and stacked it up against my fence there to stop the erosion from coming through to my property. They raised the wall 20 some odd inches, and then this patio / fire pit area is raised 18 inches out of the ground. Plus they're now, according to the artistic rendering, going to be adding to this on the outside. They're going to be adding a seating area for the fireplace, the fire pit. This is encroaching onto my property line that's there. We know that the board is not allowed to grant variances without using the lot lines. Okay, and right now I'm saying that this is less than 1 foot to my property line. which according to Bill White is what they're allowed to be, is up to 1 foot. We're saying that this is, because it's 18 inches out of the ground now, plus they're putting a seating area of approximately 18 inches. And I don't know the exact numbers and everything, but I'm basing it upon the next picture to follow here. If you go forward to there, where they poured here a concrete footing now around this circular fire pit area. They're going to be using retaining wall block, which are on their driveway now as we speak, around this, and they're going to be getting closer to my property. And they've rendered my 6-foot stockade fence, when they stand on this concrete patio right now, being that they raised their backyard up 40 inches at least, all right? I see them from the waist up as I'm swimming in my swimming pool on the other side. This is an invasive of my privacy. It is an invasion of my privacy here. It's encroaching too much on my property. We need to interpret whether this is a flat patio or is this a raised patio / deck, because everything that the building department says to me when I go to the front counter is that this is a raised paved area, but it needs to follow the setbacks of a deck. Now, the terminology deck in the town of Smithtown does not mean that it's made of wood construction. It can be concrete, it can be masonry, it can be anything. The artistic rendering also has dimensions on it. And surprisingly, and it doesn't surprise me, but there is no dimension shown on the artistic rendering from this point of the concrete fire pit area to the property line. There are all other dimensions all around, but all those dimensions are taken to fences. There are some to the pool, there are some to the house, but where it really needs to be concerned, whether it's near a property line or what it's doing, it's always to a fence. And if you look at their supplied artistic rendering, their artistic rendering completely shows that they're dimensioning to a fence. They need to be dimensioning to a survey. Now, the building department, when they went and inspected, they specified to the Fallons that they needed to supply a survey showing the paving in the backyard. And to date, there's still no survey. The survey that they supplied is a 1971 survey, okay? And it is unacceptable to me. It's unacceptable to my attorney. There isn't a dimension on that survey that shows anything to a paved surface, to a fire pit area. There isn't even on that survey showing a retaining wall that has existed on that property. It's been submitted multiple times with that retaining wall in place. Now, their fence on the rear property line is over on the other side of the retaining wall, where it shouldn't be. It should be on top of the retaining wall, but that fence, their own fence, is completely on town property. And if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Fallon told me that she had purchased that fence and that the town actually installed that fence for her. How that worked out, I don't know. But what I'm saying is they're dimensioning to those fences that are off their property. They're dimensioning to fences that are on my property that are set in from my property. And they're saying everything's honky-dory, and it's not, okay? I'm greatly hoping that the board, does something about this. The other thing is that the retaining wall is not before you at this point. The engineering department is requiring that they obtain a prior built building permit, and they're also requiring them to obtain DEC approval and move forward on getting a permit then for adding to an existing retaining wall. Now, if you guys try to approve this application the way it stands now, being that the back portion of the fire pit wall is at 3 feet 7 inches, according to the Fallon's artistic rendering, then you're limiting your ability to tell them that A, you don't like the fence, the retaining wall in that location, and you're leading the cart before the horse. You can't. Everything here goes hand in hand. How they raise the property, how they're putting in the fire pit, and all the approvals. I'm an engineer myself. Okay, I'm a builder also, and I know structure. Okay, and I said that retaining wall was going to fail, and it is failing. Okay, engineering is also saying it. It is built from an old block that is a small size block, and then they put a larger retaining wall block, which doesn't interlock with the old block, and then they put capping on top of that, which doesn't even lock in with the other part of it. The entire package needs to be reviewed at one time. Okay. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a retaining wall. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have concrete paved pavers in their backyard. Are they beautifying their backyard? Yes, they are. But they're also encroaching on my property. They're also giving me drainage issues. They also are invading my privacy in my built-in pool. Okay. And there's neighbors further down from me that say that they see him standing on top of that, and they can't believe that they can see that far down, that many homes down, see him standing over my fence. Okay, so I'm begging that the board please adjourn this meeting. I'm asking you to require that a survey by a licensed surveyor or a professional architect or engineer, okay, show us where these structures are. I'm also asking you to please give us an interpretation of the code as to whether this is a flat paver, a flat paved patio, which would allow it to go to the 1 foot setback. I am saying, and my attorney is also in agreement with me, and other design professionals and even employees in the building department are saying that this should be considered a structure and should have an offset of 6 feet from the property line. And with that, I give it back to Vinnie Tremarco in case he has some closing statements to make.
Thank you, Arthur. Mr. Chairman, I can only say that probably the most expeditious thing to be done here is to have, as Mr. Heinrich said, a licensed surveyor survey the Fallon property so that we know exactly what's going on, not only for my client's benefit, but for the board's benefit in order to determine what variances are necessary, and would also help the building department and the engineering department to make decisions with respect to permits that are necessary. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tremarco. Is there anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand.
So do my husband and I have an...
One second. Let's just see if there's anyone else that wants to...
Oh, I wasn't sure if that applied to me.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay, fine, thank you. Mrs. Fallon, you would like to respond?
I would. I again would like to remind the public that this is a variance meeting based on over paving. However, I would like to respond to the comments. One, Mr. Henrich does not live nor maintain the home. The 18 Roy Drive that Mr. and Mrs. Steinbach had resided in prior to death is actually listed as an abandoned property in the town of Smithtown at the moment. It has more than 13 pages of violations, of which over paving, a retaining wall that was built with illegal materials and without permit, and a series of things. So we're here about a variance. So I'm not going to go through his laundry list. I'm just going to identify specific things that he stated because they're untruths. The fence that is in our backyard was actually purchased by my husband and I and gifted to the town of Smithtown. We paid Victorian fence to put that fence in because we had small children, and the fence that was there was a broken chain link fence that was rusted. And before a lot of the overgrowth had happened in the town property, kids would hang out there. And as a parent of young children home alone, because my husband works nights, I wanted a better protected property. So we made a deal with Victorian Fence that they would do the fence for us, but it actually didn't belong to us. We officially and legally gifted it to the town of Smithtown. So our fence, the entire L shape of our house, is actually owned by the town, but was given to the town as a gift from my husband and I. So the town did not install it. They did not pay for it. They did not remove the old fence. We did all of that and gifted it to the town of Smithtown. So I would like to clarify who owns that white PVC fence. Second of all, the fence for which he's referring to, which is a wooden picket fence that shares a property line with us, actually faces the wrong direction. As a pool homeowner, he was supposed to have that fence flipped properly so that the sides of the fence, the decorative side, faced our home, and put it on the corrected property line, because we didn't want to look at the telephone pole that actually belongs on his property. But he's refusing to remove the fence because the fence is dilapidated. So once he starts to pull the fence out, he'd have to replace it. We had at one point offered to split the cost of a fence as long as the fence would be put on the property line. That request was declined by both him and years prior by Mr. Steinbach when he was alive. With regards to the retaining wall, our retaining wall actually has a permit that was given by the town. It was signed off by Mr. Vecchio. Blaze did have conversations with us regarding the retaining wall. I'm not quite sure why my husband and I were not invited to a meeting that was specifically about my property. So I don't know who to address that with, but if you all had a meeting on Friday, we should have had the courtesy of being invited to it, but neither here nor there. The wall has a permit. The town has agreed that if the top course was removed, which it was, that the permit would stay in play. The town is the one that upholds the code, not the public opinion. So we relied on Mr. White, Blaze, I apologize, I don't know your last name, and the inspectors that are hired by the town of Smithtown, who ironically were here yesterday to inspect the wall and saw that the course was removed. So I want to make sure that I recap here. The fence was put in by Victorian Fence, paid for by the Fallons, and gifted to the town of Smithtown. We had asked repeatedly for the shared fence line to have a proper fence put in on the correct property line facing the proper way. We had asked for his video cameras that he has in the back of his home to be re-angled down, not in our backyard, as we have children who are minors, and he's videoing our children in the backyard using his security cameras. The fire pit that you had seen photos of, when the workers for the company that is putting in our pavers did the fire pit, they had actually put the concrete in the wrong spot, which is why they did not move any forward any further. The seat wall is supposed to sit on top of the wall that's already finished, not in addition to. So it won't sit behind where the construction is. It actually sits about 15 inches up. So that would be where you would sit. It's already constructed, and they have to remove the cement that's there because that was done in error. And that was identified the day after when the owner of the company came to see what our complaints were for how they had done the fire pit. With regards to the erosion, we have taken great pains to ensure that drainage pipes are put in while the property was opened and exposed, both alongside the fence that's shared, as well as across the back to ensure that we stop the erosion so that the integrity of the property lines stayed intact. My wall and the Steinbach's wall do not touch each other. There is a significant gap between the two. So when he claims that the fence lines are on the retaining wall or the retaining walls touch, that actually is not true. I'm happy to send the board at some point today or tomorrow while you're making your decisions an actual photo of the two walls, ours, which is permitted and legal, and his, which is illegal, and he's been fined for it. I can show you that gap. So the walls do not touch. Engineering has come out. Engineering has agreed that it is not an engineering concern and that it was a building department decision, at which point the building department sent Inspector Bruno out, and Bruno had inspected the wall and the top course had been removed. So to recap, we are here for overpaving. The fence needs to be turned and put on the property line accordingly. The retaining wall that we have on our property has been inspected by the town in the building department, as well as engineering, and decisions have already been made on that. I'm not entirely sure I hit every point, but I do believe that the most critical concerns that he had was that we are encroaching on his property. I want to remind the town that the house is listed as an abandoned house. He does not live there, but we have implored the trust for the Steinbachs, as well as when the Steinbachs were alive, to please fix their fence and put it on the appropriate property line. And the response was, they don't want the telephone pole to be on their property. So they moved the fence so that the telephone pole is on our property. So after 18 years now of living here, when we do anything, that telephone pole is part of our backyard because we can't get the owner of the fence to do what legally they should.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say
Please.
something, Mr. Chair? Just got a quick
No.
couple things.
Tony?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing, Blaze, is there a possibility that there's going to be additions to this application, that it may not just be paving?
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
Is there a possibility that this application is going to be modified?
I really can't answer that because based on the paperwork that was submitted with the application is as presented. It's for an increase in paving in the rear yard. Mr. Heinrich had spoke to the board about his concerns about the case, and he relayed to the building department, and in a meeting that I was a part of, he has a concern that there's an issue with the property boundary and the fact that the fence is not located in the proper location, and that perhaps the patio that's being constructed right now may be less than 1 foot from the actual property line. But there's no way for us to tell that unless, you know, somebody had another survey done.
So that's my concern. If this application remains the way it is, and we do have it just as a straight variance for paving, then that can be determined with the dimensions that we have based on the site. If in fact it's going to be modified where we have to worry about distance to lot lines, then I think we would need an updated survey showing distances to those lot lines. I think that personally, I think we can close the application we may have to reopen it, because I would rather personally have this application all as one if there are going to be subsequent additions to it. But I think we should get with Bill White tomorrow and find out if that's going to be the case, because if there are concerns that maybe this thing is going to be added to, then we need to deal with it all as one. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was Mr. Heinrich had mentioned something about an interpretation. There's no possible way for us to do an interpretation unless one is requested, and obviously that would come after a denial from building. So obviously that would need to be brought by Mr. Heinrich, because obviously no one else would request an interpretation for that.
Okay, I would just like to ask counsel if, in her opinion, if additional information may be submitted regarding this case by the applicant or by anybody else who is interested in it. Would it be better for the board to leave this matter open until all the information has been presented and supplied to the board, instead of closing it and then having to reopen to bring that information back?
I think it's best to keep it open, and then, as Tony suggested, consult with Mr. White and the other issues that were brought up this evening.
Okay.
All right, then, so we'll leave the application open.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have a question, sir.
Quickly, what did you?
I'm sorry, but the issue at hand was specific to a variance for paving. It is identified and determined that the paving conforms to the neighborhood. It is identified that it added value and increased the property value of the homes associated within the 200-foot radius. The building department has determined that our retaining wall, including Blaze, who stated that the retaining wall, as long as that top cap was removed, was fine. And Bruno was here yesterday and confirmed that.
Okay.
So that application, I'm concerned that I have permits that have been closed out that now you're saying could potentially be reopened. I have a very large amount of property that has stone with young kids and an adult and a dog that we've been navigating around for over a month and a half because we halted all work so that we could have this meeting. And keeping the case opened to entertain a person who is a non-resident who themselves have multiple issues, I'm not sure is exactly how the variance is fair to my husband and I for what we've presented.
We would just like to leave it open, talk to the engineering department so we can get all of our facts straight before we make a decision. We don't want to make a decision that's bad for you or bad for Mr. Heinrich. We want to make a fair decision. We need additional information. This is not a cut and dry case. So, you know, we'd rather leave it open. This way, when we get that information, we can just bring you back.
Right. But we realize, right, that the time on the calendar, I have an open pool. I have pavers that are in my driveway. I have pavers that are in my backyard. I have a financial hardship because the contractor is requiring payment because we've halted his project since August now. So I can't pay him because the workers aren't here. It's a financial hardship for my husband and I because I'm going to be forced to have to pay for something prior to work being done when I have permits for everything that has been done to code and permitted by the town. So I'm struggling to understand why a variance for overpaving would require anything additional when it comes to a retaining wall that already is permitted.
One of the things about the Smithtown code is that you right now are requesting to go from 25%, which is permitted, to go to 68%, which is not permitted. If that had shown up on your original application, you would have never started the project because it would have been denied from the get-go, and we would have had this hearing prior to opening the property up in the backyard. If we were to close the hearing tonight and act on this particular portion of your application, you would have to bring an entirely new application for anything that is subsequently found afterwards. It's in your best interest for us to leave this application open so that we can add it and look at it all as one, as opposed to close it and then force you to bring a whole new application in.
Ms. Fallon, you're muted.
I don't know why it keeps doing that. It keeps putting me on mute, but thank you. I guess the concern would be, so for the items that we have received permits for and are physically closed, are you saying that the town has the right to unpermit something?
I believe the town always has the right to unpermit something. Don't know if that's the correct terminology, but if a permit were deemed to have been issued in error, the town always has the right to revoke a permit. I don't see that that's the case here, but it appears that your original application did not show 68% paving, otherwise it would have been picked up at the time.
Right. Well, at any point that we had shared our plans with the town, with the inspectors, the knowledge share of the paving would have been appreciated. When you do go on for code regarding pools, it outlines very specific in your pool section requirements for alarms, for lighting, for electric, for fencing, but it does not decide or provide any guidance in relation to what goes around a pool. For safety concerns, nobody is leaving it as grass or loose gravel. So it would be pavers. And at no point in your pool code section does it relate to paving. So anybody who is doing this, honestly, you don't know what you don't know. You rely on those that do know. So we've had tons of conversations with Mr. White, with the ladies at the desk, with this design, with the inspectors that have been here, and not one person, not one, made reference to the overpaving, potential overpaving, or staying within guidelines, even after we had provided our documentation. So what we're struggling with is, how did I get here to this conversation? And why was there a conversation about my family with the town and a person who doesn't even live in Smithtown, but my husband and I were not invited to the conversation? That is a strong concern, that this whole thing was discussed amongst a lot of you, which would make me think that everything is not necessarily fairly discussed. I'm very concerned.
We're getting off.
Just for clarification, no one on the board was at the meeting. If there was a meeting. First I'm hearing of it.
They said there was.
I understand, but I'm just telling you, no one on this board was present at the meeting.
But
So I guess the question is.
We cannot have people talking over each other.
So
Yeah, if people are going to speak over each other, ma'am, you are not on the record.
So as I understand it, the meeting was held on Friday the 5th, and Blaze from engineering, Bill White, who heads the building department, and legal counsel, Jennifer, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, were all in attendance with Mr. Heinrich discussing 16 Roy Drive.
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
Blaze?
Yes. So at the meeting, Mr. Heinrich addressed concerns about the construction at 16 Roy Drive, in addition to providing information about 18 Roy Drive and his concern about a property boundary dispute.
Well, there is no boundary dispute. We've been imploring them to please move their fence, so it was accurate. I've literally lived here for 18 years. We have been unable to get the fence properly installed and put on the property line. So I think if he is that passionate about ensuring that we don't encroach on his property, then I feel that he should put the fence accurately, and then I don't have to look at the telephone pole that actually is part of his property. So I'm all fine. We can make the availability to our backyard this weekend so that he can fix the fence. We are completely okay with that, and we have been asking for many years.
All right, are you willing to leave the case open? So the board can collect additional information.
Yeah, I mean, I
From the
honestly
engineering
don't know what that means.
It means we're not going to close it.
Well, I honestly, and I don't think it's her decision. I personally think we leave the case open because if I personally, as a board member, don't feel I have the information I need to render a decision, if there's anything more to this application, if it is only to do with the percentage of paving in the rear yard, then I feel we can close it. But since there was information brought up at this hearing that may turn into some lot line variances that may need to be addressed, then I would suggest we leave it open. 100% your call, though.
Right. Well, with regards to the lot line, based on the way the fire pit is and the way that it end result, now you have to remember, the photo of the rendering is a 3D computer graphic, so a little artistic fudging, for lack of a better way to put it, but it gives you an idea. But as mentioned, the cement that he took a photo of was poured incorrectly and has to be removed. But we did not allow any workers on our property to fix anything because he stands on his roof and takes pictures of my backyard with my children in it.
The one thing that I want to avoid is you're putting things on the record that have no business being on the record.
Right.
Well,
We're talking about your
Mrs.
problem.
Fallon, this is getting pretty off topic, and with all due respect, we do have.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is, I think we leave the case open. We talk to Bill White at the building department tomorrow. We find out if there is any forthcoming information. Because to be quite honest, to look at a survey like the one that we have submitted that has things handwritten on it, doesn't tell me anything about anything with respect to distances from lot lines. However, if that's not part of the application, then it doesn't matter.
Right, and it's not part of the application because based on where the fire pit is, even if he was to move his fence 4 feet, I still have a 1 foot leeway, which 1 foot is what you are allowed to have. So I believe based on code, based on the requirements, and based on the true lot lines on the survey, that this truly is a variance meeting for overpaving.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn it until December 7th, the next meeting.
So
Okay.
we're not to continue any form of construction now until after that. So it's not like you're getting your information tomorrow. Decision.
We have to contact the engineering department, sit down with them and find out.
And decisions have to be made at a meeting.
Which is fun.
So
We can just close it at that point, but obviously since we don't have the information now, we have to get it on the record. We're not permitted to add anything to the record once it's closed.
okay, and the meeting only happens once a month, which is December 7th.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the earliest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have no choice, but at the end of the day too, it's important to note the impact to the housing surrounding us, because I can't lay cement if any portion, whether it's this plan or anything else, those pavers need to be cemented down, and based on weather and the coldness, you can't do the cement. So I've now gone from August to December, which is an enormous hardship for me, the builder, and now trying to arrange for having something based on weather within the neighborhood when everybody is trying to clean up from the neighborhood for everything.
Ms. Fallon, we're getting off topic again. We need to move on with the calendar. So as chairperson, as Mr. Ben said, it's on for December 7th.
All right, thank you. All right, please.
All right, do we want to go back to the case, the prior case where the applicant was not present?
Is he here?
18608 Jeffrey Strattinger.
I believe he said that they were going to adjourn that to the 7th. Yeah, Malagonera.
Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, he said moving my hearing to December is fine. Thank you and have a good night.
I didn't hear that.
He sent a message to me directly.
Oh, he sent a message?
Yes.
Is that all right with you, Mr. Chairman?
December 7th, bring your blanket and pillow. All right.
All righty, let me mark that. All righty. So the next case on the agenda is 18610 Scott Milady, 4 Wood Hollow Court, Fort Salonga. The location of the property, the north side of Wood Hollow Court, 79 feet north of Wood Hollow Lane. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 52 feet for a proposed 447 square foot first floor addition, to reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 50 feet for a proposed 75 square foot front portico.
Could I have the applicant, please?
This is Scott Milady.
Okay, hello, Scott. You're going to present it yourself?
No, I have James DeLuca with me. He's with DeLuca Designs.
Okay, James? Hello, James? Do you know where he is, Scott?
He was on earlier.
He was on earlier. I did see him.
Yeah, I did too.
Just going through.
He is on, he's just muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can you just state your name for the record? Spell your last name, give your address, please.
James DeLuca, DeLuca. Having offices at 477 West Main Street, Huntington, New York. Okay, I'm the architect for the Miladys. We are proposing a renovation to the existing single-family residence for the purpose of expanding their kitchen. We're working going forward instead of going back because of the existing conditions of their backyard. Presently, they have a finished backyard with a built-in barbecue, patio, stone patio around the built-in pool. So we redesigned it so that we can take the interior spaces and expand the kitchen into the existing dining room and living room, and then recreate that by pushing forward. We have, as you stated, an addition of 448 square feet. 200 square feet, which is in the shaded area, is approximately 200 square feet of the addition going into the setback. As stated, we're asking for a reduction of a 60-foot front yard setback to a 52 and 50 feet roughly for the portico, the covered portico. The site itself has got a mature landscaping to the west, which will remain and give buffer to the residents on the west side of the property. We have a letter from the neighbor on the right side of the property, which is the easterly side, who has reviewed the application, is in agreement that and favorable for this and has no objections. The property itself steps up from the court. The property itself also, as you can see in the picture that's on the screen right now, is a large portion of it is to the rear. So it is tight up front, but that's where the house is presently placed. Due to the cul-de-sac, we have that curve of the 60 foot, so that kind of encroaches on where we could come forward. So we're asking for relief for the one-story addition so that we can kind of expand the house forward without really having to redo or affect the finished backyard that we presently have. The application itself will meet all of the zoning as far as the setbacks, lot coverage, height limitations. So the only request is really for the front yard relief. What else can I say about it? Like I said, we have consent from the neighbor to the east, and we're hoping that we can get relief from the board and still maintain a 50-foot front yard setback, which we feel is still gives us a good distance from the road. And like I stated before, that the front yard landscaping that kind of gives a good buffer from the street would remain.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to be heard on this application?
As mentioned before, if anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Jeff. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18611, David and Dana Bohm, 30 Delmarie Lane, Wisconsin. The location of the property, the west side of Delmarie Lane, 468 feet south of Yardley Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the setback to any lot line from 6 feet to 3 feet for an existing 123 square foot, 12-foot tall shed.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Yes, this is James Zapka from Todd O'Connell Architects, representing Dana and David Bohm of 30 Delmarine Lane, Wisconsin, New York, 11767.
Okay, and all the necessary paperwork was submitted.
The owners.
All the application was submitted, and the homeowner is actually in the Zoom meeting to verify.
All right, could I have the homeowner, please?
Yes, hi, this is David Bohm from 30 Delmarie Lane.
Good. David, would you like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes, I would, sir.
Okay, fine, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, we are here tonight requesting a variance be granted to let Dana and David's shed remain in its current location in the rear yard. The Bohms constructed this shed approximately 10 plus years ago. Unbeknownst to them, they actually needed a building permit to construct this shed. The shed is approximately 123 square feet and is 12 feet tall. Due to the size of the shed and the height, it is actually supposed to be located 6 feet from the property line on the side and the rear. It is actually located in reality 3 feet from the rear property line and 5 feet from the side property line. As you can see from the photos that were submitted, this shed was actually buffered very nicely by the Bohms from their neighbors, and there's an existing tree buffer on the neighboring side as well. Also along with a 6-foot fence. So this doesn't really impact the neighbors to their properties on those two corners. We asked the board look favorably on their grant on the decision for this property so they can remain to enjoy their backyard throughout the summer season.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
If anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18612, Michael Delelia Jr., 9 Van Buren Court, Wisconsin. The location of the property is the east side of Van Buren Court, 250 feet south of Wilson Avenue. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 35 feet to 30 feet, which is existing at 33 feet, for a proposed 241 square foot first floor rear addition.
Can I have the applicant, please? Hello? Is the applicant here?
Jeff, is he in the queue?
I am not seeing anybody at the moment. Michael D'Elia, if you're here, you can speak up. I don't think he's here.
All right, what we'll do is we'll go to the next application and we'll come back to this one.
Sorry, Chairman, you have somebody with their hand up. Maureen's iPad might be them. I'm gonna signal them to unmute themselves.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Who are you, sir?
Hi, how are you guys doing? I'm not a very good Zoom person, so pardon my lack of technology here.
All right, can you just state your name and address, please?
My name is Michael D'Elia Jr. My address is 9 Van Buren Court, Wisconsin, New York, 11767.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, so we want this addition for a mudroom. We have a couple of dogs, and they go outside on the lawn and they come in and they're filthy, and they run through my whole house here with dirty paws and whatnot. We want this for, like I said, a mudroom and a side entrance. We're gonna also maybe have do some crafts in there. My wife sews. She also irons down the basement, and I'd like to have that done upstairs during the winter months when it's cold down the basement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Once again, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The next case on the agenda is case number 1-18233, Richard Barbado, New Mill Road in Smithtown. The location of the property is the north side of New Mill Road, 1,928 feet east of Mill Dam Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 20 feet, to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 75 feet to 27 feet, for a begun prior 2,096 square foot single-family dwelling.
Okay. Can I have the applicant, please?
Yes, Richard Barbado, B-A-R-B-A-T-O. I'd like to give Lou Castellano permission to speak for me.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Lou, can you just introduce yourself, spell your last name, give your address, please?
Louis Castellano, Castellano, 2701 Middle Country Road, Lake Grove, New York.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to thank you for reopening my case. I want to apologize for my client. He prematurely framed the house, didn't realize he had to wait for this hearing. The building permit and plans match exactly what is being built. We are here because the surveyor made an error on the extreme right-hand side of the survey. He shows the house at 18 feet when it should be 22. So we go from 31 feet to 27.1. We have a 3 foot, a little less than 4 foot change in the original variance. The front variance is as stupid as just one extra step. That's why there's a difference of the 1 foot, which was previously approved. But the foundation was in. The mistake was based on the surveyor. We got our building permit. No one in the building department, engineering, no one picked it up. And then when we started building the house, they realized that we're less than 4 foot in that back, only in the back right-hand corner. Everything else we applied to. We adhere to.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Planning,
No, thank you.
is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Is anybody who'd like to be heard, please reuse the raise your hand function. I have Stephen Muller. Gonna ask him to unmute.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Stephen Muller. I'm the resident at 15A New Mill Road, Smithtown, New York, 11787, directly to the west of the applicant. I just have a question. I just want to understand, because obviously I know last year there was pretty significant variance on the west side. I believe it was 20 foot to 12 feet. Has any of that changed from my property line and what they're requesting for variance? Because I see in their plans, it looks like it's 8 feet now as opposed to 12, just from what I could see on this image.
No.
So just to answer the question, the setback of the house has not changed, nor has the setback of the cellar entrance. What you're looking at is the foundation of the cellar entrance giving them access to the cellar. So that's what is set back at 8 feet. The house itself is still set back at 12 feet.
Gotcha. Okay. And it's my understanding that they've already been approved from the prior variance from the front yard reduction from 50 to 21 feet and the backyard from 75 to 31 feet. And ultimately they want to go from 21 to 20 feet and 31 to 27 feet in the front and backyards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience has any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, fine, thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
You too.
5 seconds.
Darlene? Darlene,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
how are you holding up? 'Cause
Okay, do we have much longer?
we have one more case, but I think it's probably going to be pretty long.
So can we take 2 minutes,
You want to take a 2-minute break?
if you don't mind?
Not at all. We're going to be taking a
Thank you.
2-minute break.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18485, Marcelo Garcia, 28 Eckerncamp Drive, Smithtown. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Eckerncamp Drive and Stengel Place. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 2 feet to 0 for an existing 69 square foot roof over pool equipment. Decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 8 feet to 2 feet for an existing 95 square foot pool house. To reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 0 feet. To increase the maximum height of an existing accessory structure from 15 feet to 28 feet. To increase the number of stories of an accessory structure from 1 story to 2. To reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 46. To permit environmentally sensitive land, slopes in excess of 15% to be altered for a built prior 950 square foot detached 2-car garage. To decrease the minimum setback of an existing 5-foot retaining wall from the property line from 5 feet to 0. To increase the permitted square footage in the LWRP from 4,754 square feet to 6,839 square feet.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tramarco. I represent the applicant. We've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing this afternoon as per the board's rules with Zoom meetings. Initially, I'd like to say that when Mr. Garcia came to me, he was pretty much into this application. I guess there was someone who was helping him with it, an expediter, I guess. And in any event, he came to me, and my first question was, how did you get into this situation when initially you purchased this 1960s house, renovated it inside and out? You tell me you spent about $500,000 and you got permits for everything. So how is it that you build a garage and you didn't get the appropriate permits and variances, et cetera? And of course, I'm talking about the main structure, the garage. I know there's a pool house and a covering over some pool equipment. But Mr. Garcia said, well, it was in the middle of COVID and I wanted to get started on this garage. My men had nothing to do because I had no business at the time. So I figured I would start by just pouring the floor and then apply for the permits. Obviously, this whole deal got away from him, and here we are tonight. As you can see, Matt, if you go back to the survey for a minute, please. Okay, do you have a little bit more of that survey? Can you move it over to the left so we can see Mr. Kerwin's property, who's right adjacent? Do you have that survey?
Yes, I'm pulling it up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Matt. As you can see, the highlighted garage is practically on the line, and right next door is William Kerwin's property. Interestingly enough, if you look at Mr. Kerwin's property and remembering that this is an R21 zone, half acre, 21,760 square feet, and Mr. Garcia's property is probably close to an acre, but look where that garage is, it's right on the line. So I got a call from Mr. Kerwin's attorney, who I expect will speak tonight, and he said, well, you know, how can we should meet and we should try and ameliorate the problem. Obviously, it's my problem, not Mr. Kerwin's problem. But if you look at the Kerwin property, and if Mr. Kerwin, and I specifically state that he doesn't have to do anything and doesn't have to help at all, but we did offer to buy a portion of Mr. Kerwin's property, which is adjacent to the garage, which encroaches obviously into the side yard. And if you do the numbers, and if we took and we bought 16 feet, again, Kerwin doesn't have to do anything. Mr. Kerwin would still have a conforming piece of property for the R21 zone. He'll meet the side and rear yard and front yard setbacks. And obviously then, if he would agree to do this, which he hasn't, we would have the necessary 16 feet, which would make up our side yard. And again, I emphasize he hasn't done that, although I did make the offer to the attorney, Mr. Chris Modulewski. In any event, we then said to the attorney, look, we'll plant a row of trees, however many trees Kerwin wants, along the side where the garage encroaches. We will start at the back of Kerwin's property and run all the way up to a point where it doesn't interfere with sight distance of the people driving on Eckerkamp Drive. Mr. Kerwin, through his attorney, suggested that we lower the garage roof on the garage that was recently built. Matt, if you go back to the pictures, please, that we submitted. Okay. As you can see, the initial house, you're facing the initial house that was, again, renovated with permits by Mr. Garcia. You can see the gable ends of the existing garage, which faces Eckerkamp. Mr. Garcia, felt that to make it the same height as the existing garage gable end would be more in keeping with the entire character of the house. And that's why it was done that way. Also, the suggestion again to lower that roof, my discussions with Mr. Garcia would mean that you would have to tear the whole roof off. Basically, do some interior strengthening of the ceiling, because the pitch of the roof would be much lower and it wouldn't create the arch effect, which gives it strength in this situation. So whatever engineering would have to be done, they would either have to do more lolly columns in the garage or bar joist construction or some sort of truss construction. Interestingly enough, another factor that I'd ask the board to consider, we could attach the two garages. I spoke to Mr. Garcia today, and if we attach them, it would become, in my opinion anyway, and I guess Blaze would have to comment on it, if we attach both the existing garage and the recently built garage, and we attach them together, it then becomes part of the house structure, and the height requirement would be the same as that for a house. And it's probably not an easy fix, but a fix that could be done, and certainly could be done a lot less, more expensive than lowering the roof substantially. So one of the things that I did present by voicemail to Mr. Modulewski was the fact, again, that we could put trees up. We really couldn't, I guess you could do anything, but to take the roof off of the garage and start all over again would be a tremendous hardship to my client. So therefore, We suggested the tree planting. However, Mr. Kerwin would like it. So, you know, given the fact that it at least conforms to the rest of the house, again, you can see the pictures. If you have the front view of the house, you'll get a better idea of how that's the reason why it was built the way it was built with a high peak. Again, it's not for us to say, or even the board, I guess, that Mr. Kerwin should sell us a part of his property. We did make that offer. And again, it wouldn't affect Mr. Kerwin at all as far as the size and the conformity. His lot would still be conforming in every respect. But again, I emphasize that's his property. He could do whatever he wants. We also offered when Mr. Kerwin feels he would like to sell his property and go, you know, somewhere else, and we would be online or first in line to pay market value for his property. Again, I'd want to emphasize that we did everything right in the whole beginning of this whole process, where we took this 1960s vintage home and radically improved every part of it, as you can see. It got away from us, or Mr. Garcia, when he started the slab of the garage or the footings, when he didn't have anything for his men to do, when he was in fear of losing them. Should he have done it? Absolutely not. We are in a situation now which is pretty severe. I can't tell you that he didn't cause it. He certainly did. But we're looking for a way to ameliorate the situation. We don't feel that the variance would have an impact on adjacent properties. Even if you think about the highness of that roof that Mr. Kerwin apparently has issues with, and again, he has the absolute right to have any issues he wants. But if you think about it, if we attach both the garage and the old garage and the new garage, it becomes one unit, and the height requirement goes away. Does it still encroach on the side yard? Yeah, it's almost zero, and that's an issue that the only way I can talk to it is, at least for now, unless Mr. Kerwin changes his mind, is he hasn't even said that that the plantings that we offered would be allowable, much less satisfy him. But I'll let his attorney deal with it. Is it substantial? Well, in one sense, certainly it's substantial because it's right on the line. On the other hand, it does conform with the rest of the house. Can the benefit be achieved by some alternative? At this point in time, the only benefit would be I don't even think you could cut off a side of it. I did talk to Mr. Garcia about cutting that corner off and giving some distance between the lot line and the garage. But he said even that would incur having to cut the roof and the side and so forth. It would be a tremendous job to do it. With these structures, the structure of the garage and the other minor structures, the pool house and the roof over pool equipment, does it have any environmental effect? No, it has no environmental effect. There's no additional sanitary flow of any kind. Was it built without permits? Yes, it was. It absolutely was. And We're trying to remediate the problem any way we can. We know it severely affects Mr. Kerwin, and that's why we're trying as best we can to solve a problem that I know we created, but we're asking the board for some help in this matter, and hopefully the board will look into this. I'm not sure that I still think we need, I am sure we need the environmental, the DEC permits for this issue of the garage, although we certainly got them for all of the house permits. We also need LWRP. I also want to bring to the board's attention the Brightstein case, which I had a few weeks ago, which the board was good enough to decide after reading a number of cases that were submitted to the board. I believe the board wanted to review those cases. They did the last time before they decided. You call it Brightstein. It was case 1-18378, which, as I indicated to the board, in that situation, Catrice Floyd bought the house, and this board was good enough to grant those variances. And I submit I have submitted in behalf of Marcello Garcia exhibits of the Brightstein case, which is now Catrice Floyd, which this board granted a few weeks ago, as well as the other cases that I submitted, one of which is directly on point, Edward Schneider, January 13th, 2010, case number 16068, where this board reduced the minimum side yard setback from 12 to 0. And the other cases submitted, which were not to 0, which were 2 feet and 3 feet. So I asked the board for its favorable consideration. I know we're asking a lot from the board, but, and I can't tell you how it got away from Mr. Garcia. I think he knows pretty well now that he is in a fix. And again, we tried to negotiate. I don't know what Mr. Kerwin's lawyer is going to say, but I assume he's going to speak soon. So we've gone through the 5 criteria. We're hopeful that the board will look at what it did in the past on the Brightstein-Floyd case and the other case that I cited. I believe that was Schneider, 2010, which some of the members of this board were on the board at that time. So with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Tramarko, in the newly built garage, the upper level, what is that used for?
Storage. I was there this Saturday. I looked at it personally. They stopped it. Of course, there was a stop work order, but they stopped working on the garage. There's an interior stairway that goes up. It's unfinished. It's just storage. There's no any intention to finish it in any way. Mr. Garcia owns 2 or 3 classic cars and would like to store them there. He doesn't work on cars. He's a general contractor. He just likes to have a few classic cars. So that was the purpose of the garage.
All right. How many stop work orders were issued on that garage? Do you know?
I think only one. I'm not sure that there was more than one. Honestly, I don't know.
My understanding was a few. All right, does anyone else on the board have any questions?
A couple things. Mr. Tramarko, can you bring up the survey again, Matt? You had stated that the applicant's property is roughly an acre, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, geometry, I was never that good, but I don't know. It looks like, it's an odd shaped piece, but it's at least more than 3/4 of an acre. Probably close to an acre, and it's got a very big side yard facing Stengel Place. If you look at the other part of the survey, Mr. Kerwin's piece, the only point I was making is if it was possible, and again, it's all in his hands, if a piece of his property, 16 feet to be exact, would get sold to my client, he could still have a conforming piece of property and not need any variances for the R21 zone.
The only reason I bring it up is because I think you're right. I think it is almost an acre, and on a site that is roughly twice the size of what's the requirement in that district, it would appear that there are plenty of alternatives that the applicant had to put this structure and the other two structures in positions that did meet the required setbacks.
Well, it might be true with respect to the smaller structures, but I don't know that it would make sense to put the garage, given the fact of the layout of the house and the driveway and everything, any other place. Should he have violated the side yard? Absolutely not. But I don't think he could have put that garage somewhere else. Maybe on the other side, but then you would have to extend the driveway and come around where there looks like there's a stairway going down on the, I guess it's the west side of the property.
Okay. And then the only other comment I had was just for the record, having reviewed those, the Brightstein case and the other cases that you submitted, respectfully, those cases are nothing like this case.
In your opinion?
Yeah, that's what matters to me, though.
And in my opinion.
In mine.
I would concur.
All right, anyone else on the board have any questions? Anyone else on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Planning?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say to the board that the request is certainly substantial. The applicant did have alternatives before work began, construction began on the garage. I don't know if there's going to be any kind of an environmental impact. I tend to think not. But it's certainly substantial, and I think taking into consideration the number and severity of the variances being asked for, that certainly it does have an impact to the immediate neighbor to the east, that would be the Kerwins, and approval of an application of this magnitude would certainly set a precedent for applications of similar requests for detached accessory structures.
Thank you. Before we open it up to the general public, again, just go over the rules. Everybody is going to get one opportunity to voice their opinion on this particular application. Once they're all done, we'll bring Mr. Tramarko back to answer your concerns, and then the case will be closed. Okay, with that said, is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I am seeing one hand raised.
Okay.
Christopher's iPad. You may unmute yourself.
Okay, I guess I'm unmuted, but there's a line through the start video option. If I could be seen and heard, I'd appreciate it. Is that better?
We can see you now.
Yeah. Okay, could you please introduce yourself, please? State
Yes.
your name, spell your last name, and give the address for the record.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Benz. My name is Christopher Modeleski, Modelewski. I'm an attorney at law with offices at 44 Elm Street, suite number 18 in Huntington. And I'm appearing this evening before the board on behalf of my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Kerwin, who live immediately to the east of the subject. And I would hope that you'd indulge me for just a few moments, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm, in all candor, shocked and dismayed by some of what I heard from Mr. Tremarco. I say that because all of you know, because you convene on a regular basis, that zoning practice is fairly collegial. And, we treat each other as advocates with great deference and respect. I had called Mr. Tremarco after I had been retained by the Kerwins with the intention of speaking to him about some means of possibly ameliorating the stark and extremely adverse nature of this garage and the great effect somehow somehow trying to ameliorate the great adverse effect it's had on my clients and their property. So we did chat about that a little bit, and we did exchange some other communications over the course of the last several weeks. I guess what disturbs me the most is that I hear this evening that Mr. Tremarco has submitted proffered precedent to the board, but he somehow failed to not include me in that. And that's just unfortunate, and it's really not the way that we do business. But having said that, I will tell you this. As a municipal lawyer of some 32 years duration, I've taken only three opposition cases, and this is one of them. The reason being, as you might all imagine, as board members, if you're out trying to get things done for property owners, if you're on the side of development, it's uncomfortable to appear before boards of appeal like your own and to take up the other side. So at least with respect to me, and I think it's true probably for most practitioners, we have to see something particularly egregious in the use of land that causes us to rise and appear in opposition to a pending application. And in all candor, that's exactly what happened for me here, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I've seen the structure. My clients went out and got a new survey. It's not in the record, but I'd be happy to share it with the board if the board wishes to keep the record open. Mr. Tremarco mentioned, I believe a couple of times, the garage being almost on the line. It is very much on the line. And as was aptly acknowledged by you board members during the inquiry, while Mr. Tremarco was presenting his case, the overall massing of the structure is rather significant. So there are, as Mr. Donadio pointed out, a number of variance reliefs that are pleaded and requested herein. If maybe one of them, or perhaps even two, were extant, maybe my clients would not be so very upset about this building, but there's a multiplicity of things that Mr. Garcia would need in terms of relief in order to eventually get a certificate of occupancy for this building. Mr. Tanzi aptly asked Mr. Tremarco the question that jumps right off of the page when one looks at the survey instrument, or if you're out on Eckernkamp or over on Stengel Place and you take a look at the land, and that is this: why could you not have simply located this garage? If in fact Mr. Garcia is an auto enthusiast and he merely needs some additional storage space for collector cars, why could you not have located this over on the westerly side of the property? It could have been done lawfully. And I hasten to add, we all know and have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've all had to make certain adjustments. This very means and method of conducting this hearing is proof of that. We all know that building departments were overwrought with a great deal of work. There was a great deal of uncertainty, and it's become the vanguard to excuse either contractors or homeowners from going ahead with work not approved and simply trying to document to the best of their ability what went on. But that's a different issue entirely when we're talking about something that's otherwise lawfully being constructed, but for the fact that either a contractor or a resident was unable to get a timely response from a building official because of this horrible worldwide disease. So I don't find that an availing argument for Mr. Tremarco's client. What I think the board should take note of, and which I found quite frankly outrageous, is that what the proffer really is that this is an architectural tenor that made sense to Mr. Garcia. In other words, and it is handsome. I mean, when one looks at the gables, when one looks at the ridge height, when one looks at the pitch of the roof, it all makes great architectural sense. But that's all to the advantage of Mr. Garcia and all to the disadvantage of Mr. and Mrs. Kerwin. And that's simply not what zoning is about. You all know, because you are zoning board members, that Euclidean zoning, which actually we get from the 18th century Prussians. Euclidean zoning, what we have here in the United States, is all about perception and relation. What does something look like? How big is it? How massive is it? Where is it located in relation to other buildings owned by other people? When you look at the core principles of Euclidean zoning, and you look at the merits of this application, you can't help but think that there just is no reason to grant it. And I'm sure I need not suggest to you, because I'm sure members of the board have already gone through this in their own minds. If you took the case on a clean slate, on what the law calls a tabula rasa, in other words, if Mr. Garcia came here without having built the garage and simply sought to obtain this board's imprimatur in order to build it, I think that the collective response of the board members would have been something like this. There are alternative locations that are lawful. There doesn't seem to be any compelling reason under the law to permit you to do this. And, it seems to us that this would be an unfair burden imposed on the neighboring landowner. I think those are extremely important questions that need to be asked and answered. And I think with all due respect to Mr. Tremarco doing his best for his client, and I would never criticize that. Advocates are supposed to do the best job that they can, but I just can't see thinking people coming down on the side of granting this. Now, I did communicate to Mr. Tremarco just an idea, just a kernel of an idea of mine. And it included at least taking the ridge down, and in my estimation, turning this two-story structure into a single-story structure. That was rejected out of hand. I don't think that would have been especially good for my clients, even if it had been accepted. But I thought it was at least a good idea for me to give it a try. So there was an offer that Mr. Tremarco communicated to buy a strip of the Kerwin's land. As Mr. Tremarco himself understood and acknowledged on the record, my clients aren't in any way expected or obliged to give up any of their land to accommodate Mr. Garcia's mistake. They don't want to do that. They like their yard, they love their neighborhood, they love their home. They're dismayed that they've got a massive, and it is rather large, a massive structure that from the perspective of streetscape only, you know, and I suppose from Mr. Garcia's and his family's perspective, it looks quite handsome. When you're at the Kerwin's front door, you get an entirely different point of view. And I respectfully submit to you board members that that is important as you weigh the factors in the statutory test, and that not for lack of trying, but Mr. Tremarco has utterly failed to carry the day with respect to the 5 factors and has failed to convince, I think, you board members to grant the many reliefs that are required in order to make this illegal structure legal. So I thank you for bearing with me. I tried not to be overly verbose, but I know what your rule is, once and one time only. And that's what I had to say on behalf of my clients. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, there is another hand raised. BJ Cook.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, BJ Cook, 37 Ekron Camp Drive. Cook is spelled C-O-O-K-E. So I live across the street from the Kerwins, and I just want to say that the scale of that garage is tremendous. It's 28 feet high on top of a 5-foot retaining wall, so it's 33 feet above grade. It's totally out of character for the neighborhood. It's a monstrosity. It's huge. So people driving by from the east, all you see is a big blue wall when you approach that garage. It juts out in front of the house. It's a nightmare. So I urge the board, without any, without Kerwin's agreeing to something, you cannot approve that garage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to be heard on the application?
Mr. Chairman, we do have another hand. Steve Pelicano, go ahead.
Hello, Steve.
We're not hearing you at the moment. You appear to be unmuted, but we still can't hear you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think his audio is actually turned on. He might be on a iPad. What he should do is, if he can, use his telephone to dial in. We'll be able to hear him. Unless he knows how to change the settings to allow volume, but he's not showing up with a microphone.
Can he hear us?
He could probably hear us, yeah.
We can't hear you. No volume.
Yeah, he doesn't even have a microphone. Steve, if you can hear us, if you have an iPad, you can change your settings to allow audio, or the fastest way would be to just dial back in using your mobile phone, or just a regular phone.
All right, I assume he's gonna call in.
Yeah, I'm gonna Keith McCartney wants a phone number. Let me send it to him.
Yeah.
Okay, so I sent it in text, but just in case, is Steve still on the call? He is. Steve, the phone number is 646-558-8656. All right, and the meeting ID is 843-1830-913. I'm also going to type that into the chat just so you have it. And the passcode is 957153. And Chairman, I would just recommend going to somebody else in the meantime.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Wait, I think we have him right now.
Hi.
there you are.
Are you guys? Hello, hello. My name is Steve Pelicano. I live on Camp Drive. And
Okay, Steve.
27.
Steve, can you just state your name, spell your last name first, so we get it correct, and give your address, please?
Really? Pellicano. And the address is number 27 Camp.
Okay. Thank you.
I find, thank you. No, thank you. I find it very interesting, some of what we've heard tonight, going back to earlier disputes with neighbors against neighbors. What I'm kind of stymied by is the this garage, this structure is out of character with this neighborhood. This block is a block of Sweetbriar, and it has homes with many different characteristics, but no characteristic quite like this structure built for automobiles or storage or what have you. And one point that really stuck out was like, well, Mr. Trimarco said, well, we could make it part of the main house, and that'll like make the symptoms of this problem go away. The other issue that seems to be troubling to me is someone earlier was having a dispute with their neighbor over a fence that was posted the wrong way, and you're talking about boundary lines, and literally this house sits right on the boundary line. So I walk past there for exercise and so forth, and you can't miss it. But what also was interesting was the Mr. Trimarco's argument that maybe if this structure had to be removed, it would be a financial hardship to the homeowner, and then we would be first in line to buy his entire property or any part of that property, just so we can get what we would like to have happen, which is to, I guess, maintain this structure. So it was built without permits in many, I guess, ways. It was built without permits. Here's a person who's a general contractor, as stated by his own attorney, that he somehow is ignorant for this self-imposed error in construction, which goes against the community values of having property lines, I don't know, 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet from the fence next door. It does even, this argument tonight didn't even address the environmental concerns of some, like, I guess you could say like a little wooded area bordering on Stengel. And it seems to me that this would not be a good precedent to set, because someone could come to the property line to my property and then maybe put up whatever they wanted to put up essentially on the line, and then say, well, I'll plant some trees, so come on, let's cooperate, or I'll buy like 10 feet more of your land, name a price. Or better yet, if you want to sell, I'll buy the whole thing. I'll be first in line to buy that property. It just seems to me that this is counter to the values of the town of Smithtown, the board of Smithtown, and looking out for the tremendous characteristics, attributes, and qualities that Smithtown has as a place to live, to raise family, to raise children, and to bring it all home again. I don't know if you can excuse someone's self-imposed ignorance while they are a general contractor in the building trades and then build without permits and then say, oh, like, oh, you know, pardon me, I'm looking for amelioration, which is an excellent SAT word, and I would like to get what I would like anyway. And I don't know about things like the stop work orders. I don't know if stop work happened. I don't know anything about that. I'm just a concerned homeowner who is thinking forward. Could someone do that to my property, to the next neighbor's property? And what precedent did the town board set by having someone make an argument? Here's the argument. Well, I'll wrap it up. Built without permits. It's an error on his part. He got into this jam. If we fix it to the main house, oh, everything's good. As far as the 20 feet above, 30 feet above, 40 feet above, I'm unaware of those issues. But it doesn't seem to me reasonable for a precedent to be set where someone could build right up against the fence line in anybody's house. And then for their attorney, their representation to say, well, it's a financial hardship. So what we're going to do is try this forest trees, planting, disguise it, still there. But we'll buy some of the property. And if they ever decide to move, we'll buy the property outright. And then we'll just, you know, kind of expand our holdings there. Well, it's a free country, I get it. But it doesn't seem like a good policy and a good precedent to set for this town, this community, this specific district in the town of Smithtown. And I guess I pretty much said what I wanted to share with the board. And there's really no hard feelings.
Okay.
It's just some facts.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this application?
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any at the moment. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any other hands.
Okay, fine. Excuse me. Mr. Tramarko, would you like to come back to answer any of these concerns?
Well, I will try. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Modulewski for his tutorial on zoning. It was very informative. I'd also like to remind him that I'm under no obligation to submit any exhibits to him prior to the hearing, as he was under no obligation to submit a survey to me or to tell me how he was going to present his case tonight. Other than that, I think, you know, we've all said it all, and I thank the board for its patience.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. And that concludes the meeting for tonight.